Our point is the third, the issue of the nafs and the hawa, which we must contradict, okay? That the principle there is mukhalafatu. That's mukhalafa, is to contravene it, to disagree with it unconditionally, okay? That's what our teachers say. So the principle of tazkiyah, which is the issue of the nafs, the purification of the nafs, of this quote-unquote soul, the self, is what? Is that you must contradict it. And what's going to be very, very important is, in order to contradict it, you have to hear it. You have to listen to it. And that's really, really important. You have to be able to recognize the voice of the nafs, because it speaks, yani, it speaks. And its words, it's called hajis, hawajis, the voice of the nafs in and of itself. If you don't hear it, you can't contradict it. But if you're able to hear it, tune into it, and subhanAllah, how we can't hear it, because it is loud. It's like a, and that's what they say, it's like a donkey, and it's got that type of brash noise. It's loud. It's not a silent voice. But many of us, we can't hear it. Which, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, summun, bukmun, umyun, deaf, dumb and blind, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes such. We ask that Allah ta'ala excludes us from such, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so here, radiyallahu anhum wa radahum, it's about contradiction of the nafs. That's what the Prophet ﷺ means by declaring war against it. Okay? Contradicting its dictates. Ammara bisu, you know, by the word of Allah ta'ala, when it's speaking, it's only ever commanding you to evil. So simply contradict it. Okay? Based upon the contradiction of the nafs, then, and you're still listening, what you're going to find is that the voice of the nafs begins to change. It's going to start to weaken and weaken and weaken. And that's one of the important things about hunger, what hunger is going to do. It's going to weaken the actual voice of the nafs until the actual content of the actual voice, the voice of the nafs will change. So the nafs then becomes what in English what we call like a conscience. Okay? A conscience. Allah Ta'ala says, Surah Al-Qiyamah, La uqsimu bi yawm al-qiyamah, wa la uqsimu bin nafs al-lawwama. It's called the nafs al-lawwama. And the nafs al-lawwama is what? Is the critic that exists inside of the human being. The critic. That's what the nafs al-lawwama, lawm means to find fault. So it's lawwama. Not ammara bisu, but lawwama. It's a different voice. And that only comes about through contradiction. It's a critic. And note there's degrees of its criticism. Okay? Because the human being, of the degrees of the criticism, as an example, is that it's still a nafs. Is that how you can find fault in everybody else. That's nafs al-lawwama. You can look at people and you can, and you often, don't worry, you're right. Your criticism is bang on point. Yani, mashallah, tabarakallah. Because Allah Ta'ala gave that to the human being. Save that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not want you to be a critic against others. He's give you that capacity to be a critic against self. Okay? So it's not about criticizing others, although mashallah, don't worry, you're good at it, we understand that. You bang on. And the point I'm saying about that when somebody criticizes you, you should try to perceive that their voice is really your voice. Mean embrace the criticism. Don't like, well, who do you think you are, yani? Telling me, yeah, you can look at yourself, yani, before you want to come and speak about me. La, embrace the criticism, because mashallah, tabarakallah, all they really want, maybe from where they don't know, they don't perceive, they only want what is best for you, mashallah, tabarakallah. But ultimately, that faculty of criticism is for you to criticize yourself, to find fault in yourself. And when you begin to project it upon self, not upon others, that's when it becomes a conscience. Everyone got the point? It becomes a conscience. And of the highest manifestations of that voice is when that voice is a voice of haya, a voice of modesty. Like modesty prevents. So that's when it's the true conscience that is saying, don't do that. Because it prevents you from doing acts that are worthy of loam, worthy of being considered blameworthy. Okay? Prevents. It's still, mashallah, beautiful if it's after the fact. Like in anthropology, they'll speak about shame cultures and blame cultures. But shame cultures are always better than blame cultures, because shame prevents you from doing the act. Blame is like, why did I do that? You get the point? So maybe in the future it'll stop you from doing it, but it's after the fact. You get the point? So in the taraqi of the nafs, initially it will be blame. Oh man, I shouldn't have did that. man, that wasn't good. Man, what's the effect? How Allah Ta'ala going to view me for doing that? It's blame, 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 until it reaches the highest degree. Shame, 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 shame. Huh? And it's on the basis of that shame, then that voice is going to become silent. When you become a person of shame, yani. When you begin always listen to the voice of shame, which is nafs al-lawama, at that point you're going to see tataraqqa, you ascend, you ascend, you ascend, until you're listening for the voice, and lo and behold, there's no voice. You can't hear a voice whatsoever. That is, Ya ayyatuha nafs al-mutama'inna. O nafs that is mutama'in. And mutama'in is the silent nafs, the serene nafs. It has nothing else to say, because irji'i ila rabbiki. It's only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala something to say. Irji'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiyah. Return to your Lord radiyatan mardiyah. He says subhanahu wa ta'ala, fadukhuli fi ibadi. Now you're a person of da'wah. Enter among my slaves. Wadukhuli jannati. Enter into my paradise. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, end of Surah Al-Fajr.